I used to think college was a place where you earn a future by working hard and pretending to understand footnotes. Turns out, it's also where you learn which people will smile at you while moving furniture out of your life. If you're here for a neat story about ambition and love balancing each other out, wrong channel. This is the unglamorous version, the one where my girlfriend fell for my teacher, my mentor, the person whose signature I chased like it was a ticket out of gravity. We met our first week on campus at the activities fair, Megan with a tote bag full of flyers she pretended to care about, me with a free slice of pizza and a promise to join 3 clubs I would never attend. She said my name like she'd been practicing, like she planned to say it a lot. We were both scholarship kids learning to walk like people who belonged there. Our first date was an hour in the library pretending to study and 20 minutes on the steps outside admitting we were pretending. She laughed at my jokes until they sounded like honesty. I learned how to listen to the parts of her voice that even she didn't. If this were a different story, it would end with diplomas and photos you put on a mantle. In this one, the pictures are screenshots I can't bring myself to delete. Professor Hargrove came into it like a new season of a show you love. He taught modern political theory at 9 in the morning and still got 90 students to shut up and take notes. He had the kind of charisma that makes chalk look like electricity. Gray hair, sleeves rolled, voice that could convince a room to move the goalposts and be proud of it. Everybody adored him, but he made you feel like he adored you back, which is a dangerous trick for any adult to know. He remembered names the first week, and when he said mine out loud I sat up straighter like I'd been drafted. On the second Tuesday, he called on Megan. She answered with the nerves of a person who grew up with more library cards than birthday parties, and he lit up. Precisely, he said, smiling. That's a subtle reading. After class, she floated down the hallway like a balloon on a mission. I think I'm switching my concentration, she said, and we laughed because of course now she wanted to be a theorist. We started quoting Hargrove the way people quote movie lines. Power is a story we tell ourselves, he said, and then the story told us. Office hours were a rumor at first, friends claiming you could go in confused and come out with a thesis and a new spine. I didn't try them, I'm allergic to doorways with lines. Megan went the second week and came back glowing with the smug relief of a solved problem. He said my paper had teeth, she told me, showing me comments in the margin. Hargrove's handwriting was neat, parentheses like little arms. At the bottom he had written, "Talk to me about applying for the fellowship." She looked at me like she'd been seen from space. I hugged her like I was happy for us both. Sometimes I think about the first time Megan said Hargrove's name like a magic word. Sometimes I think about the last time she said mine and how it sounded like an apology wearing a disguise. Mostly I think about the things that survived, my friends who showed up with dumb jokes and folding chairs, my mother's recipes, my capacity to stand in a room where I was small and leave as a person who still knew his shape. And sometimes, late, I catch the faint smell of that perfume in a place it shouldn't be. My stomach tightens and then I breathe, and the air moves, and I don't mistake nostalgia for a summons. If you're looking for advice, I have only this: pay attention to the sentences you start with. I'm probably just being paranoid, but those are often the truest ones. Don't worship anyone whose job depends on your awe. Don't let your love story become someone else's office hours. And when the knock comes from the future you didn't want. When the door opens and the room smells like paper and coffee and the wrong kind of approval, remember that you can walk away before you memorize the place. You can file the report. You can pack the box. You can learn to make lasagna and run in the cold and write your own ending without a signature at the bottom. I didn't used to believe in plot twists that ruin real lives. Now I know they don't ruin them. They rewrite them. The trick is to keep writing after the ad break. Megan kept trying. The texts shifted from apologies to anger to bargaining. So everything we had dies because I made one mistake? I wrote back, it was several mistakes, and none of them are mine. She said she was going to therapy. She said she understood if I hated her. I said I didn't, because I didn't. Hate is too heavy to carry for someone you once planned a life with. Disgust is lighter. It fits in your pocket. Weeks clicked by like beads on a string you didn't mean to count. The department sent emails in a language that had been scrubbed clean of responsibility. We are committed to a safe learning environment. We take reports seriously. Hargrove's name disappeared from the course catalog for spring. A friend sent me a screenshot of his LinkedIn, which had been quietly updated to consultant. He'll land, the friends said. They always land. I blocked the message and unblocked it and read it again and went for a run until my lungs felt honest. The last time I saw Megan, it was snowing. We met in a park because public is safer, less history there. She wore the scarf I bought her last winter and I tried not to think about the night we ate ramen and made fun of the influencer who said snow is God's dandruff. She said, "I'm sorry," which is the only line left when the third act runs out of tricks. I said, "I know." She said, "You were good to me." I said, "You were good to me, too, until you weren't." She said, "He made me feel like my ideas were already real." I said, "He's good at making everything feel real." We stood there until the snow decided we were done. I wish I could tell you I learned a tidy lesson and now I can spot a boundary from 10 miles away. The truth is messier. I learned to listen to the part of my body that tenses before my brain catches up, the tiny flinch when someone's laugh lingers in somebody else's throat. I learned that mentorship is a gift with teeth if you give it the wrong mouth. I learned that love isn't proven by jealousy but sometimes it's protected by saying, out loud, "This feels wrong." I learned that I can survive a betrayal without becoming one. By spring, my life looked new without asking permission. I started a morning routine that didn't include checking for disasters. I retook a class I dropped because sitting in that building had made my pulse weird. I sat in a different corner and the ceiling didn't fall. I applied for a small research grant and got it. The professor supervising me was brilliant and boring, two things I suddenly craved. I ran into Hargrove once at a coffee shop off campus. He was with a man in a suit who looked like a lawyer from a movie. We made eye contact, he nodded, the kind of nod you give a plane you hope won't crash. I left without ordering. I don't need to turn every scene into closure. For her sake, I repeated, as if saying it could turn it to dust. You're worried about her? I care about my students, he said. Not enough, I said, and walked away. You'll be relieved to know I didn't tweet it. I didn't stage a sit-in or print flyers. I went home and folded in on myself like paper. Megan texted for hours, paragraphs that looked like apologies but read like strategies. I put the phone face down and listened to the radiator complain on my behalf. Around 3 in the morning I realized I could hear laughter from the street 3 floors down, 2 people rehearsing the parts of their night that wouldn't make the cut. I hated that laughter for being carefree in the vicinity of my grief. I slept for 20 minutes and dreamed of chalk dust. Morning brought the kind of clarity you only get after you've drowned and coughed yourself back. I filed a report with the department because there are processes for this, even when everyone would prefer to pretend otherwise. The secretary at the dean's office gave me the same look the night manager at a cheap hotel gives you when you show up bleeding, resigned compassion. I didn't want revenge, I wanted oxygen. I wanted the version of myself that didn't watch doorways. The investigation was all procedures and careful wording that tasted like cardboard. Alleged relationship. Potential violation of policy. Consensual but inappropriate. The phrases tried to thread needles that shouldn't exist. Megan met with an advisor, then with me, then with herself. I'm dropping the class, she said, voice flat. And the minor. She looked smaller when she said it, like someone had turned down her resolution. She tried to hold my hand while telling me it had only been kissing, like the noun was a life vest. I moved my hand. Hargrove went on paid leave while they assessed. The campus whispered. You could feel it in the lecture halls, the way rows of seats somehow turn into a courtroom when the right roomer walks in. Some students defended him because he had changed their lives. Some condemned him because they wanted to be on the right side of a sentence. Most of us just kept going to class, because rent still existed and the future doesn't pause for your disaster. I moved out of the apartment Megan and I shared because every mug looked like the one on his desk and every lamp felt like a witness. A friend let me sleep on his couch, his cat judged me and sat on my chest like an emergency blanket. My mother came on a Sunday with an insultingly large lasagna. She set it on the counter and didn't cry until I did. My father said, "Do you want me to call somebody?" And I asked who, and he said, "I don't know, anybody," and we laughed in the broken way. Something in me broke. That wasn't anger, it was the small internal rule that says you should respect the pedestal. I pushed past him and opened the door. It wasn't a movie tableau. There were no clothes on the floor, no operatic reveal. Megan was on the window seat, knees up, sweater sleeves stretched over her hands. Her eyes went wide like a car's brake lights. "Evan," she said, the syllables slipping, "it's not." "Don't," I said, because the sentence I'd heard in 1,000 bad stories was not going to star in mine. Hargrove's office smelled like paper and old coffee and that new perfume Megan loved. On his desk, 2 mugs, one with lipstick on the rim. A draft of her paper with "yes" scrawled in the margin like an answer to a question I hadn't asked. The clock on his shelf ticked too loudly, a metronome for a performance I refused to applaud. "How long?" The words came out before I could write them. Megan stared at her hands. "I don't," she swallowed. "A month?" "Less." "It wasn't." She looked at him like the script was taped to his forehead. "I didn't plan." "Of course you didn't plan," I said. "Heard like this can't be scheduled." Hargrove tried to step in, to narrate a version where he was the responsible adult who made an error in judgment. "This is my fault," he began, which is a sentence men like him practice. "Megan is brilliant." I blurred a boundary. "The power dynamics here are." "Textbook?" I said. The word was a knife I'd accidentally sharpened by going to class. He shut up for a second. Megan looked up at me with that pleading expression that had gotten us so far, for so long. "I felt seen," she said. "He believed in me." "You do, too, but with him it's like, I don't know. Like I could skip steps." "You can skip steps," I said, "but you don't skip consequences." She winced like I'd pressed a bruise. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want to hurt you." "You wanted to be chosen," I said. "And you wanted the person choosing you to have the keys to a door." I left before I cried in a place that had never seen me do that. In the hallway, the fluorescent lights made everything look like a bad decision. Hargrove followed me out, hand half raised like a traffic cop. "We need to keep this confidential," he said softly. "For her sake." The audacity of "for her sake" made my vision tilt. A week later, Megan cancelled our date because Hargrove's bringing in a visiting professor. "It's a networking thing." I said, "I can come." She said, "It's small." That night I saw her tagged in a photo with 3 grad students and 2 professors at a dim bar the internet swears is casual. She wore lipstick she only used for birthdays. Someone had cropped the photo weirdly, like they were trying to keep a secret standing just outside the frame. I went to bed with my phone in my hand and woke up with it there, like a worry stone that vibrates. The break in the illusion wasn't some dramatic set piece. It was Thursday, late, the week after Thanksgiving, one of those days the campus feels like a hotel lobby between conferences. I finished a group project early, and because I am a man powered by dumb romantic decisions, I decided to surprise Megan, show up after her evening seminar with hot chocolate and a bad joke about footnotes. The building was half dark. The elevator groaned like it was thinking about retirement, so I took the stairs 2 at a time, warmed by the thought of her face when she saw me. Hargrove's office door was closed. Light showed under it, a thin slice. Voices, his, low and smooth, hers, pitched blur, the kind you use for difficult truths or lies. I knocked, because I'm civilized even when my lungs are on fire. Silence. Chair legs against carpet. The door opened a quarter. Hargrove looked out like a surprised homeowner. "Oh," he said. Give us a second, would you?" Behind him, I saw a sliver of Megan, hair messy, eyes wet, hand near her mouth like a curtain that forgot its job. She moved out of view. He stepped into the hall and pulled the door closed behind him, putting the handle between us like a shield. "It's late," I said. I didn't recognize my voice. "It is," he agreed, genial, practiced. Megan was upset. We were talking through something. You know how the semester is, everything comes due at once. "Let me in," I said. He smiled like a doctor explaining that the shot won't hurt. I think she needs a moment. The hallway felt too narrow for 3 adults and a lie. Professor, I said, enunciating each syllable so I wouldn't stumble on the wrong one. Move. He didn't move. Inside the office a chair creaked. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. You can't be here right now, he said. He used the tone people reserve for dogs and toddlers. If we had been older, wiser, better, maybe the next part would have gone differently. Instead it went like this: she started staying late after class, walking with him to the department office, carrying her notebook like a passport. Her texts got slower. Sorry, still with Hargrove brain exploding, in a good way. She began speaking in his rhythms, quoting him without the quotation marks. It was subtle, the way a houseplant leans toward a window you swear you didn't open. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself you don't put suspicion between two people just to see whether it breaks. But red flags don't always wave, sometimes they sit on the table, plain as a syllabus. Little things. Megan changed her phone password and said it was because she'd started using Apple Pay. She bought a new perfume and said it was a free sample. She rolled her eyes when I teased her about professoritis, then kissed me like that proved anything. One night she came back from office hours at 10:30 with a to-go cup and a smile that didn't include me. We talked about grad school, she said, voice bright. He thinks I could get into Columbia. She said he thinks like other people say God said. Midterms swallowed us whole for a while. I crammed at my desk under a lamp that hummed like it was worried for me. Megan studied at the library because Hargrove had set up a reading group for interested students, which turned out to be half the class and 2 people from a different department who wanted to bask. I stopped by once with snacks. Through the glass I saw her at the end of the table, him leaning on the back of her chair like proximity made him a better teacher. I waved, she didn't see me. When she finally looked up, she smiled with her mouth only. I left the snacks with the receptionist and told myself she'd be grateful later. Come meet him, she said one Friday, like she was introducing me to a celebrity I kept refusing to acknowledge. You'll like him. I did not particularly want to like him, but I also didn't want to be the jealous boyfriend who prefers suspicions to sunlight. So I went, like a person walking into his own courtroom. Hargrove's office felt like a thoughtful storm. Books stacked in careful towers, photos from protests decades apart, a postcard from a city with more history than mercy. He stood to greet me, shook my hand with exactly the right pressure, and said, "Ah, the man who rescued the broken printer last month." He remembered everything. He asked me about my projects, listened like I was saying something new. When Megan spoke, he watched her like a coach watching an athlete evolve in real time. The 3 of us talked about a paper due Monday. I left thinking maybe I'd invented the whole thing and also knowing I hadn't. The human brain can hold 2 impossible ideas and still keep your heart beating.